I found a spy camera hidden in my office bookshelf, feeding a live signal to my stepson's iPad. He thought he was recording my downfall to steal my logistics empire, but he forgot one thing. I didn't get this rich by being a victim. My name is Arthur Sterling. For 20 years, I've built my world in the silence of boardrooms, preferring the weight of a signed contract over the noise of social media. But today, I'm breaking that silence. Not because I want your sympathy, but because I want to show you exactly what happens when you mistake my kindness for weakness. My name is Arthur Sterling, and for the last 20 years, I've built a shadow empire in the American logistics industry. You won't find my face on TikTok or my drama on Instagram. I prefer the silence of a boardroom and the weight of a signed contract. But today, I'm breaking that silence. Not because I want your sympathy, but because I want to show you exactly what happens when you mistake my kindness for weakness. They say blood is thicker than water, but in my house, blood was nothing more than a tool for betrayal. Let's talk about Tyler, my stepson. I met him when he was 8. I was the man who taught him how to tie a tie, how to drive a car, and how to carry a name that meant something. I gave him a life of private jets, Ivy League prep, and a black credit card with no limit. But as he turned 21, I saw the rot in his eyes. He didn't want to be a Sterling. He wanted to replace the Sterling. He saw my $50 million net worth not as a legacy to protect, but as a prize to steal. It started on a rainy Tuesday in my home office in Connecticut. I've always been a man of detail. I noticed the smallest things: a shifted chair, a stray hair on my desk, the smell of cheap cologne where it didn't belong. But it was The Great Gatsby on my bookshelf that gave him away. The spine was tilted just 3 degrees to the left. When I reached up to straighten it, my fingertip grazed something cold, something metallic, a pinhole spy camera, hidden inside the book. My heart didn't race. I didn't scream. A cold, surgical calm washed over me instead. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and within 3 minutes I had traced the signal. It was feeding directly to an encrypted folder on Tyler's iPad. He was watching me. Every private phone call, every business deal, every moment of grief I shared with the photo of my late wife. Tyler was recording it all. He was looking for dirt. He wanted a scandal to block my upcoming promotion to CEO, hoping the board would oust me and hand him the reins of the family trust. But here is where Tyler made his fatal mistake. He forgot who taught him how to hunt. I didn't remove the camera. I didn't confront him. I looked directly into that tiny lens, smiled inwardly, and whispered to myself, "If you want a show, Tyler, I'm going to give you a masterpiece." The trap was set, and Tyler was about to walk into a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. The first rule of warfare is to let your enemy believe they are winning. For 3 days, I played the part of the unsuspecting victim perfectly. I walked into my office, sighed heavily, and acted like a man crushed by the weight of a failing empire. I knew Tyler was watching his iPad screen from the comfort of his bedroom, salivating at the thought of catching me in a moment of weakness. On Friday night, I knew the timing was perfect. I poured myself a glass of expensive scotch, sat directly in front of that Great Gatsby book, and pulled out my phone. I didn't actually dial anyone, but for Tyler, it looked like the most important call of my life. "Listen to me carefully," I whispered into the phone, my voice trembling with a fake, desperate edge. "The audit is coming on Monday. If they find out that the $50,000 insurance claim on the warehouse fire was faked, I'm finished. I've hidden the original documents, the ones with the real fire marshal's report, in the floorboard under the guest house bed. If anyone finds those, I'm looking at 20 years for federal insurance fraud." I paused, rubbing my temples as if I were on the verge of a breakdown. "I've got the $50,000 in cash in the safe right now," I continued. "I need to pay off the inspector by tomorrow night. Once that money is gone and those documents are burned, there's no paper trail. I'll be the CEO, and the insurance company will never know they were robbed." I hung up the phone and buried my face in my hands. I stayed like that for 10 minutes, giving Tyler enough time to process what he'd just heard. Through the reflection in my darkened computer monitor, I saw the shadow of someone standing outside my office door. It was Tyler. He wasn't just watching me on the iPad anymore, he was practically tasting the victory. What Tyler didn't know was that there was no warehouse fire fraud. I hadn't faked anything. My business was as clean as a whistle. But I knew Tyler's weakness, greed. He didn't just want to get me fired anymore. He heard $50,000 in cash and original documents. He thought he had the ultimate blackmail material. He thought he could take the cash and use the documents to control me forever. I left the office and went to bed, but I didn't sleep. I opened my own laptop and pulled up the secondary security feed, the one Tyler didn't know about. At 2 a.m., I watched the screen as Tyler crept into my office. He was wearing a hoodie, looking like a common thief in his own home. He went straight for the Great Gatsby book, checked his camera, and then began searching my desk for the safe code. I watched him struggle, his hands shaking with excitement. He eventually gave up on the safe and ran toward the guest house, probably looking for those fake documents I mentioned. He was doing exactly what I wanted. He was creating a digital and physical trail of him breaking into my private files. But the best part, I had already called the local precinct, not to report a burglary, but to report a suspicious person trespassing on the property. The stage was set. Tyler thought he was holding the smoking gun, but he was actually holding a grenade with the pin already pulled. At 2:15 a.m., the silence of the estate was shattered. From my bedroom window, I watched the blue and red lights dancing against the oak trees as 2 patrol cars pulled up the driveway. I didn't go down to meet them. I stayed in the shadows, watching the monitors. Tyler was in the guest house, frantically tearing up the floorboards, looking for the documents that didn't exist. He was so blinded by the thought of $50,000 that he didn't hear the back door click open. He didn't hear the heavy boots on the hardwood. Hands in the air. Don't move. The shout echoed through the guest house. I watched through the internal CCTV as Tyler spun around, his face a mask of pure terror. He was holding a crowbar, standing over a partially ripped-up floor. To the officers, he didn't look like a son. He looked like a desperate burglar caught in the act. "Wait! No! I live here. I'm Arthur Sterling's son," Tyler screamed, dropping the crowbar. I decided it was time for my entrance. I walked down the stairs in my silk robe, looking every bit the shocked and disappointed father. I walked into the guest house just as the officers were clicking the handcuffs onto Tyler's wrists. "Arthur." "Tell them," Tyler pleaded, his voice cracking. I heard a noise. I thought someone was breaking in. I looked at the lead officer, then looked at Tyler with a cold, blank stare. "Officer, this young man has a key to the main house, but he has no business being in this guest house at 2 a.m. with a crowbar, and certainly not tearing up my floors." "He's lying," Tyler yelled, turning to the officers. "He's trying to hide it. Officer, search his office. He's got $50,000 in stolen insurance money in his safe." He admitted it on camera. I have the recording right here on my iPad. I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. The moment Tyler tried to play his trump card, only to find out it was a joker. The officer looked at me, then at the iPad Tyler was pointing to on the floor. Is that true, Mr. Sterling? I have no idea what he's talking about, I said calmly. But if my son has been secretly recording me in my private office, I'd be more than happy to let you see that footage. I have nothing to hide. Tyler's eyes widened. He thought he had me. He thought the police would see the confession and arrest me on the spot. He practically begged the officer to play the video from the spy cam. The officer took the iPad and hit play. We all stood in that dusty room watching the screen. But I hadn't just been acting for that camera. I had been planning. The video started. But it wasn't the clip of my confession. I had used my remote access to the iPad earlier that evening to swap the files. Instead of me talking about insurance fraud, the video showed Tyler sitting in his own room an hour earlier. He was on a Discord call with his friends, laughing. Yeah, Tyler's voice came through the iPad speakers, clear as a bell. I've already forged the old man's signature on the insurance documents for the car. I'm going to frame him for the warehouse fire he's always worried about. Once he's in jail, the trust fund opens up. I'll finally be rid of that pathetic stepdad. The room went deathly silent. Tyler's face went from pale to ghostly white. He had admitted to forgery and conspiracy to commit fraud on his own secret recording. The lead officer looked at Tyler, then back at the screen. The burglar was now a federal criminal. Tyler, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I told you, you're not family, and family is the only thing that would have protected you from what happens next. The look on Tyler's face wasn't just fear anymore. It was the realization that he had brought a knife to a nuclear war. As the officers led him toward the patrol car, his mother, my wife, Elena, came running out of the main house, screaming, "Arthur, what are you doing? He's just a boy. Tell them it's a mistake," she wailed, clutching at my robe. I looked at her, and for the first time in 5 years, I didn't see the woman I loved. I saw the enabler who had whispered in Tyler's ear that he deserved my throne. I saw the person who had watched him become a monster and called it growing pains. The mistake, Elena, I said, pulling my arm away, was thinking that my bank account was a substitute for a conscience. I turned to the officer. I want to press full charges. Breaking and entering, attempted grand larceny, and since he admitted to forging my signature on federal insurance documents, I expect the FBI will be interested in that Discord recording. Tyler was sobbing now, the handcuffs biting into his wrists. Dad, please. I'm sorry, I was just joking with my friends. I didn't forge anything. Don't call me Dad, I snapped. My voice was like ice. You told your friends I was just the live-in help who paid the bills. Well, the help just went on strike. But I wasn't done. A Sterling doesn't just win, a Sterling cleans the board. While Tyler was being processed at the station, I sat in my office. I didn't sleep. I spent the next 4 hours making phone calls. By 6 a.m., the Sterling name was being erased from Tyler's life like a stain. First, I called the dean of his elite university. I informed him that the $80,000 annual donation I made to the scholarship fund was being redirected to a charity for orphaned children. I also mentioned that one of their students, Tyler, was currently under arrest for felony forgery. By 8 a.m., his student portal was deactivated. Next, I called the dealership. The $120,000 BMW Tyler drove? It was in my company's name. I gave them the GP's coordinates and told them to repossess it from the police impound lot immediately. Then came the hardest part. I looked at Elena, who was sitting on the sofa, eyes red from crying. I handed her a thick envelope. "What's this?" she whispered. "Divorce papers," I said. "And an eviction notice for both of you. According to our prenup, which your lawyers checked 3 times, any attempt by you or your kin to defraud or harm my estate nullifies your claim to the Connecticut house and the alimony. You have until noon to pack what you can carry. You're throwing us on the street? She gasped. No, I replied, standing up to look out at the sunrise. I'm giving you exactly what Tyler said I was. Nothing. You wanted to be real family without me? Now you can go find out how expensive that reality is. By 11:30 a.m., the house felt like a tomb. Suitcases were lined up by the marble foyer. Elena was silent, her spirit broken. And then the front door opened. Tyler walked in. He had been released on bail, but he looked like a ghost. The cocky, arrogant boy who had planted that camera was gone. In his place was a trembling young man who looked like he hadn't slept in a century. He didn't look at the bags. He didn't look at the house. He walked straight to my office, where I was sitting behind my desk, watching him through the open door. He stood in the doorway for a long time. Then he did something I never expected. He didn't scream. He didn't beg for money. He dropped to his knees. I'm not here for the house, Arthur, he choked out, the tears finally breaking through. And I'm not here for the car. I saw the video. I heard myself on that recording. I sounded like a monster. I spent my whole life trying to be somebody that I forgot you were the only person who actually made me feel like I belonged. He put a crumpled piece of paper on my desk. It was his confession, signed and dated, addressed to the police. I'm going to the precinct to turn myself in for the forgery, he whispered. I don't want the money. I couldn't leave. Knowing that the last thing I told you was that you weren't family. You're the only father I've ever had. And I'm so sorry I was too blind to see it. He turned to walk away, his shoulders slumped in total defeat. He was ready to go to prison. He was ready to lose everything. I looked at the Great Gatsby book on the shelf. I looked at the photo of my late wife. She always told me that true power isn't in how hard you can strike, but in when you choose to stay your hand. Tyler, I called out. He stopped, but didn't turn around. The lawyers have already retracted the statement. The forgery was actually a test I set up for you. There was no real fraud, so there is no real crime. The police have dropped the investigation. He turned around, his eyes wide with shock. Why? After everything I did? Because, I said, standing up and walking toward him, you finally spoke the truth. You admitted you were wrong. Revenge is easy, Tyler. Any man with a checkbook can destroy a life. But building a man, that takes work. I tore up the eviction notice and the divorce papers in front of him. The BMW stays at the impound. The credit cards are canceled. From tomorrow, you're working in my warehouse, the real one, minimum wage. You'll earn every cent of your tuition back. You'll learn what it means to be a sterling from the ground up. I reached out and put a hand on his shoulder. It was the first time I had touched him in years. You said I wasn't family. Prove me wrong. Get to work. Tyler didn't say a word. He just sobbed and hugged me. For the first time in my life, the house didn't feel like a corporate headquarters. It felt like a home. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't destroying your enemy, it's turning them back into the person you always hoped they would be.